So I want you to imagine clay tablets that are so old. They almost smell of Tyrannosaurus Rex's tail, okay? They are so old that in fact they are almost fossilized, to say the least. But however, the thing they are talking about is not old at all. The thing they are talking about is quite new. Not new in the sense that it exists in present. However, it is new in the sense that it's not even in the present times. It's something that is postmodern, that is futuristic, that is almost cyberpunk. They talk about a world where there is no animal of prey. The whole world is a comfort zone. There is only one single language, a global language that is being spoken, which sounds like what the allies today, the globalists, are reaching at. And there are some brains, artificial brains, that are incredibly intelligent to get inside every data, which are called me. No pun intended, they are actually called me or me in Sumerian. And these things are basically interpreted by some as computers. Now I want you to stop imagining, because these are actually real, okay? These are real things. And these tablets are called Enmarkar and the Lord of Arata, to be specific. We know that these tablets actually speak about future and not some present or continuous thing or some fantasy of Sumerians that co-occurred at the time, because there is a specific prefix used in these sentences that go through these tablets, that is the U prefix. And by the explanation of Herman Wanstifout, a linguist, these prefixes, these tenses in the tablet are future tenses, showing at a plan in the distant future. All of the things that are mentioned in these tablets are somewhat aligning with the futuristic ideas of the elites today, or the very select few, the cream of the cream of our society. When I think of futuristic countries, there comes to mind a few. First of which being America, because AI advances have been made by America, most of them at least. And the second being, interestingly, Israel. I don't know if I'm gonna censor its name, but it is Israel. And the second, the latter of these countries actually have more common, more connections with these tablets than the eye catches at the first glance. So, for example, the origin of Israel and these tablets align very well. Abraham, the originator of the Semitic identity as a broad term that includes Jews, is actually from these very ancient lands, the Sumerian lands, in which Bible says that Abraham came out of a city called Ur-Kasdim, or what we call Uruk today in Iraq. And according to the story, Abraham obviously went, after landing in Canaan, he sent gifts to the people of the east. Bible actually says this, Genesis 25:6. Abraham had sent gifts to east, which his concubines were at there at the time, since Abraham had still one foot in Sumerian lands which he was born in. Interestingly, these gifts have a specific meaning in Jewish mysticism, aka namely the Kabbalah, which Abraham is said to teach at the time and originate this mysticism. These gifts are actually shattered wisdom and separated occult ideas, aka what the tablets might be talking about. It's also interesting that Abraham was obviously inspired by the Lord, that the lineage that comes from him will occupy a promised land. And contrary to what most know and what most believe, those holy lands do not end with Israel and Palestine, but the revelation says that they start from the river of Jordan and end at the river of Euphrates, where these tablets and the Sumerian land, a huge portion of it, is landing upon. I said that Abraham originated Kabbalah in Jewish mysticism and Jewish literature. What Kabbalah teaches is that you can actually tap into the God's plan. There is one key, there is one secret to all of this universe. If you want to conquer the reality and if you want to dominate everybody, there is one secret, there is only one, and that is to align oneself, to align yourself with the higher will of God, not the will of the other guy next to you, not the will of mine, because they're all simple and worldly wills, but the higher will. And that higher will is exactly what creates the timeline. There are goals inside future with are exactly mirrorings of that higher will. And if you see it this way, God is actually has his will in future, because his will is inevitably going to be real. And if you can make your wishes align with that goal, then there is basically a whole guide of manifestation. Now that thinking Kabbalists do actually want these shattered wisdoms to be gathered, you can say that these tablets are talking about future, just like an marker. They are keys for Kabbalists to manipulate reality. This is exactly why they actually want these areas. And it is not about oil. I say this once and for all, it is not about oil. The war is not a physical war. The war is a pretty spiritual, to say the least. In Kabbalah, there is another way to learn about the future instead of reading some old tablets. And that is to just look at random signs that come upon you daily and find omens in them, which are called remez, symbols in Hebrew. This idea of synchronicities actually align very well with Carl Jung's idea of synchronicities, which also say that random events actually point at a destined future. Could you actually learn about something, learn about the future by remez? Why do you need those tablets, okay? If you really can learn about the future by symbols. Well, Carl Jung has also explained about this. You could potentially know about the far future by meditating on omens. That would need too much spiritual will and too much spiritual wisdom. However, if you had reached the physical source of what the earlier people had described about the future, that will be much easier. Because Carl Jung says that symbols are created at a certain point in the past or time. Carl Jung says that if in our culture, let's say we see a ladybug and think that that ladybug is bad luck, specifically according to our culture, and people that came before us had also seen it and associated it by God's will with good luck, and it turned out that it was good luck, then their interpretation is the correct one and it's the more potent one. There are archetypes that are being created, and those tablets, Sumerian tablets being the oldest guide to symbols, because there is a Sumerian tablet called Shuma Alu that is the oldest guide to symbolism actually, are the holders of all the archetypes that they need. So I might have a hard bet that Israel is kinda more interested in how to decipher those tablets than gaining access to these tablets. Does it make sense? Because once you can understand the way those tablets are written, you can understand the way that universe is speaking to you once and for all. And this is not just some crazy cocoa banana stuff, because it is actually documented that Israel and America had wanted to gain access to these tablets beyond gaining access to soil. There was an American craft store chain called Hobby Lobby that actually smuggled those tablets back in 2010, thinking or actually saying that those were, we thought they were tile samples. Yeah, they thought they were tile samples if you buy into it, okay? And obviously there is also Iraqi individuals who say that Israel is more into their spiritual past than their soil. For example, the former head of Iraqi library says that Israel wants to prove the Tower of Babylon and distort Middle Eastern history through gaining access to these tablets. Those tablets were smuggled, and then after a while, they were given back to Iraq. So that's kind of proving my point that they learned how to decipher them, and then they didn't actually need to get a hold of them anymore. The times that we live in are crazy times. We are racing with other countries to create AI first, about who is gonna create it first. But these are so crazy because the physical power doesn't matter anymore. We are fighting for information. The craziest thing that you can get a gain of is information. If you know the future, if you know the destiny of God, if you know what he wants, then you are basically invincible. That is the craziest point you can take of this whole video. It is Saint Bora, and peace out.